let's go ahead and start a record for getting right into the topics today. How many of you have had COVID? And if you have had COVID, how much did it suck? Let me know in the comments section below. And I'm not saying that just because I want the engagement, although I do. No, the real reason I'm asking is because there is a change that is going to be happening to how COVID vaccines are given out. At least that's what it seems to be. And the only way this makes any sense to me is if we have a skeptical administration that isn't skeptical in the, correct sense where they are skeptics, but we have a administration that is conspiratory theory brained. And that seems to be what we have. I'll explain here in a second as we go over the article, but first, let's get into the fan art section, and then we'll get into the video itself. This one is from Lunar Fox, that I wanted to share this piece of a Suris Space Marine. Decided to take a break from my project to combine my special interest with my favorite activist. Am I an activist? I don't know if I'd use that word to describe myself. I mean, I have gone to protests, I guess. But, anywho, honestly, the fan art is fantastic. And just seeing a Space Marine version of me, it's not the first time, and it's not going to be the last time. Something about Warhammer and my audience they just kind of click together, and I don't really know how, but it happens. So I'll take that. Terranabaster says, I lucked out and ended up with a mild case. I still wouldn't wish it on anybody but my worst enemies. I did not function very well when I had COVID. At all. At all. Anyway, thank you very much, Lunar Fox, for your submission. And if you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, I'm not super happy about what I got to show you guys. The FDA may limit future COVID-19 shots to older people and those at risk of serious infection. Now, why is this a problem? Before we get into anything else, let me go ahead and be the Facebook mom that looks at something like this and freaks out at the title. You don't want this to be your reality when it comes to how vaccines are handled. You want your entire populace to be able to get vaccinated, because the only way to know if you are at serious risk of infection is if you already have, say, an immunodisorder or an upper respiratory disorder, or you catch it and you realize, oh shit, this shit sucks way more on me than it does when anybody else has it. So that's already a bit of a problem for me. But my other big problem is that one of the major reasons to get vaccinated for COVID is not just the fact that you don't want to get infected, it's the fact that it lessens your symptoms, which makes getting COVID less of a problem for all of us in general. And because it is an upper respiratory illness, lessening the symptoms of COVID actually has a direct effect on lessening the chances that you are going to spread COVID to other people. It's almost a one-to-one. You lower your chances of having the coughs and the sneezes and the shits, and suddenly it's way harder for you to be a vector for this shit for other people. And obviously an epidemiologist could go into far more detail on how that works than I could. I am but a humble YouTuber on the internet talking about things that make me angry. So obviously, I am not an expert in these things, but the experts on these things have pointed out that people being vaccinated en masse for something like COVID is a net benefit to all of us. COVID is, in fact, endemic to the population of the world now, much like other flus. And now that it is endemic to the world, having a yearly vaccine that helps take care of this is how you handle that. But let's go ahead and read the article itself to see what's going on. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is changing the way it approves of COVID-19 vaccines for Americans, a move that may limit future shots to only older Americans or people at higher risk of serious COVID-19 infection. The agency is changing the type of evidence it will accept from vaccine manufacturers to approve updated COVID-19 shots. Dr. Vinay Prasad, the new director of the FDA's Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makey, said in an editorial published Tuesday in the New England Journal of Medicine. This change means the updated shots will probably be available this fall for adults 65 and older and those with underlying conditions that may put them at a higher risk of a severe COVID-19 infection, but they may not be for everybody who was previously eligible. Nearly 3/4 of Americans 6 months and older have had at least one of these underlying medical conditions, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The change, which has already been being studied by experts who advise the CDC on its vaccine recommendations, will more closely align the states with guidelines in the UK, Canada, and Australia. Interesting. So let's see how this actually plays out and why. It says, but millions of healthy adults and kids stand to lose access to updated vaccines under the new criteria. Prasad and Macquarie says there's not enough evidence that healthy children and adults get clinically meaningful benefit from regular COVID-19 shots, and they want to see more placebo-controlled trials, particularly in groups of adults 50 to 64, before recommending the shots for other groups. So this is weird to me because this seems to fly directly in the face of every bit of information we had about COVID-19 before and the ways to mitigate its spread. It feels very, very strange. Said it's not clear whether COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers, including Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax, will decide to conduct the randomized controlled trials the FDA is seeking for certain age groups. These kinds of studies are expensive and typically take months or even years. Okay, so let me go ahead and check something here. Maybe just get a genetic fallacy out of the way. So Dr. Vinay Prasad, I want to check you out real quick. Okay, I see why this is happening now. The flowery language of this actually puts us in line with other countries. No, bullshit. Okay, so Prasad has criticized other medical skeptics for their choices of topics to tackle, including homeopathy, as being a poor use of their time. Let's go ahead and see here to do... Debunking should be focused on areas most in need, which might not be homeopathy. Okay, so saying that debunking homeopathy is bad when, like, I literally have family members who think homeopathy works and try to use it in place of, like, sound medical advice. So, just from an anecdote, why? Skeptics David Gorski and Stephen Novella published criticisms and counter-arguments to Prasad's stance, pointing out the perils of not challenging alternative medicine during a pandemic. Yeah, it's perfectly reasonable to challenge alternative, aka bunk medicine, when you have a pandemic. So the COVID response, this is where things get interesting. In October 2021, Prasad prompted social media controversy when he published a blog comparing the United States COVID-19 pandemic response to the beginnings of Adolf Hitler's Third Reich. Ah, yes, because it's our response to a pandemic, a global pandemic, mind you, that are moving us further towards fascism. Not the actual fascist who was in office in the previous administration, who is now in office again. Okay. Science historian Robert N. Proctor said that Prasad was overplaying the dangers of vaccination mandates and trivializing the genuine harm to liberty posed by 1930s fascism. In November 2021, he expressed his opinion that pediatricians should warn parents about the risks of COVID immunization, such as myocarditis. However, physician Jonathan Howard noted that Prasad was selectively omitting the risks of COVID disease, which would not be consistent with the tenets of informed medical consent. Ah, yes. Let's go ahead and say, you know, there is a chance of this thing happening. Let's ignore the fact that COVID can cause it too, and it can be worse if COVID has it. Okay. In January 2022, the conservative periodical City Journal published an op-ed by Prasad in which he attempted to demonstrate that the American public health organizations were not being honest in their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Writing for Science-Based Medicine, epidemiologist Lynn Schaefer criticized Prasad's article for the various mistruths it contained about face masks and COVID-19 mitigation measures. For example, the unevidenced claim that mask wearing was stunting children's language development. In Schaefer's view, Prasad's writing leans heavily on pushing people's emotional hot buttons and amounted to a form of fear-mongering. Okay, let's see here. Earlier in 2023, Prasad showed support for the ideas of RFK Jr., Okay. However, according to physician David Gorski, Prasad did not show sufficient understanding of bad faith debate. In November 2023, the levels of kindergarten vaccine exemptions rose to the highest levels in years. Prasad mentioned about this outcome, but did not acknowledge his role in causing this outcome, per physician John Howard. In 2024, he expressed criticisms for the funding decisions of the NIH, as well as support for more cluster randomized controlled trials. However, according to physician David Gorski, Prasad again demonstrated insufficient understanding of the limitations of these randomized control trials, as well as how the NIH funding decisions worked. So what we have here is a guy who has the power right now, who has the power as the new director of the FDA, probably put in there because of Project 2025, because of course, why wouldn't he be? He has the power to fuck everything up. And of course, CNN is applying a light hand to this because they are establishment media, and establishment media has been failing us in recent months. I don't want to be the guy who says that actually, no, CNN's better because it's more leftwards of Fox News. Yeah, it is better than Fox News in terms of degrees, but this is such a light touch on information that should be included in this article that is important to understanding why the Trump administration, let's go ahead and say what it is, it's the Trump administration, why they are trying to push a different set of vaccine mandates that will ultimately end up harming more of us. The reason that they are doing this is because the Trump base are not vaccine skeptics, they are vaccine conspiracy theorists. And in order to play to that base, they need to do moves like this that make that base feel like their needs are being met. And putting people who do not do their due diligence and research, which it seems to be that's what Vinay Prasad does, according to the criticisms of him by his peers, and putting people who have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, like RFK Jr., who Prasad, I guess, is listening to on a goddamn podcast and deciding that, oh yeah, I like what this guy's ideas are, even though the worms in his brain tell him that he's being stupid. Like, there's so much mishandling here, but of course, this is the Trump administration, so that's what's going to happen. And I almost thought, as I was reading the article, maybe I judged the book by its cover here. Maybe I'm having a problem here. Maybe getting our vaccine mandates closer in line with the rest of the world makes sense. But no, that's also a fallacy. That is a fallacy of, hey, if everybody is doing it, then you should be doing it as well. Fallacies by population do not actually make for good and compelling arguments, unless, of course, you're a person who doesn't think very logically in general. So, this bothers me. I don't like seeing somebody who is this... God, dumb isn't even the word, because it's not that he's dumb. Like, deliberately ignorant, I guess is the best way to put it. Not willfully ignorant, but like deliberately utilizing ignorance in order to make decisions that ultimately will end up hurting us as a population. And yet we're going to see more of this as things go on. Moderna said in a statement Tuesday that we appreciate the FDA's clear guidance and remain committed to working with the agency to provide the data they need to ensure access for Americans. Pfizer and Novavax did not respond to requests for comment on the FDA's new regulatory framework. Just days before the FDA's announcement, it appeared that Novavax COVID-19 vaccine, which was 6 weeks past its planned approval deadline, it approved Novavax's COVID-19 vaccine. The FDA restricted the use of the vaccine to people 65 and older and those 12 and up with underlying health conditions. Market research and US CDC statistics indicate that older individuals and those with underlying conditions are the populations most likely to seek out COVID vaccination seasonally, Novavax president and CEO John Jacobs said at the time. This significant milestone demonstrates our commitment to these populations and is a significant step towards availability of our protein-based vaccine option. Okay, no, not really. So what you're doing is you are providing the vaccine to the people who, quote, need it most, but ignoring the fact that there are people who are, quote, perfectly healthy who COVID can completely fuck up. My partner was perfectly healthy before she got COVID, and now she's effectively got the equivalent of holes in her lungs. And that long COVID has been hitting her ever since. I feel like we all just collectively forgot what long COVID is, or what it does to the human body, or the different ways that it can cause impairments afterwards. Did we just all forget that? Or are we just like, nope, it doesn't matter? So with flu vaccines, we let anybody get them. Yes, they have to buy them, which is fucking stupid. They should be free, even without insurance, but we at least have them available for everyone. Now, for me, if I try to go get my COVID vaccine before going to a big convention where I'm going to be near like 10 billion vectors of people, and trust me, they're all nerds, they don't know what hygiene is, I know, I've smelled them, I'm going to have to deal with a much higher chance of getting infected now, because even the people who should be getting vaccinated while being healthy are not going to be able to be vaccinated while being healthy, leading to them being unhealthy. What a weird coinkydink. Oh my god. In a discussion shared online Tuesday, Prasad answered some questions about the new requirements that were posed to him by Markey. Said this is a free country and companies are, of course, free to conduct their own randomized studies in younger populations in people without risk factors for severe COVID-19. They can run the research agenda they see fit, and we will consider the results of those studies. Right, but are you going to fund those studies? Like, you do know that the majority of studies that are performed, especially in the States, are performed via government grants. So funding that research is what allows that research to happen in the first place, not sitting back and twiddling your thumbs and going, well, if you want to do the research, we'll take a look at it. Also, a lot of that research has been done. So, are you just ignoring the plethora of research we have on the population from the last, what is it, 5 years? It's 2025. 5 years of COVID. We're just ignoring all of that and going, well, you could do some new research. We won't fund it, though. Fuck you. Prasad also sought to flesh out why the FDA settled on these age groups as risk factors. For the ages of 50 to 65 age group, we are genuinely uncertain globally if those patients benefit, he said, with some countries recommending COVID vaccination for people 65 and older and others as young as 40. He said 50 to 55, we feel, is an area where there's disagreement among our peer nations. It's a place where we can bring data to this question, but we won't fund the data for it. Dr. Noel Brewer, a professor of public health and health behavior in the University of California, said that he supports this change. So the proposed policy moves the U.S. in line with other countries. This global view of public health is a welcome development, said Brewer, who sits on the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and was part of the working group mulling the change to COVID vaccine recommendations. All right, again, let's go ahead and take a look at who we are talking about here before I worry about how powerful their opinion is. So, in trying to find stuff about him, I was not able to find anything specifically because he doesn't have the same kind of online presence, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does mean that I can't get a great vibe for who he is and what he does, aside from the fact that he is leading 2 grants, one on cigarette bans and one on a study on vaping, and that's interesting in and of itself, but it doesn't really give me any information here. Let's see here. He and other experts say they're still worried about the youngest children, those under age 2, who have higher rates of hospitalization from COVID-19. Dr. Paul Offit, director of the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and a member of the FDA's independent advisory group, says that he disagrees with the underlying premise of the new framework, which is that previous COVID-19 vaccinations recommendations haven't been based on good evidence. Thank you! That's the shit that I was saying. We had good evidence already. He says, we have been using an evidence-based approach to COVID-19 vaccination, but they kind of swoop in and believe that for the first time, we're going to get, as they say, gold standard data, robust data for the first time, because according to them, we don't have that, but we do have that. That's why we've made good decisions about the vaccine. That's why the vaccine is remarkably safe. The mRNA vaccines are remarkably safe. Dr. Jody Guest, Senior Vice Chair of the Epidemiology at Emory University's Rollins School of Public Health, said that restricting access to COVID-19 vaccines is a mistake. Okay, I am glad that CNN at least added in the perspectives of other medical experts here. They were not the first ones to broach this story. There were a bunch of people who did it all at the same time, but I'm happy those perspectives are here at the very least, because otherwise I was going to get just a wee bit upset. Just a bit. The editorial says that going forward, COVID vaccines will be for people 6. We already know that. That's all here. These types of studies are called immunobridging studies. They're typically done in a smaller number of people or even in animals, and they can be done quickly, so vaccine manufacturing can ramp up in time to have large numbers of shots ready for an expected wave of illness, usually over the fall and winter. This is largely how seasonal flu vaccines are approved each year in the U.S., and it's the way the FDA has been approving COVID-19 vaccines for the past few years. For everyone else, the FDA says it will approve vaccines only after studies that prove the shots can prevent symptomatic COVID-19 better than placebo. We already have that data, though. We have... What? We already have that, though. Like, I can't just be sitting here incredulous, right? The new plan doesn't take into account other effects of COVID-19 infection, such as long COVID. Thank you. I brought it up. I'm glad the frickin' news article did. Studies have shown that vaccination may cut the risk of long COVID between 25 and 60%. COVID-19 infections also increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes. But don't worry, they're only going to accept data about the direct effects of infection, not all of the other shit that happens as a comorbidity of having COVID-19. Oh boy. The FDA is focusing on the short-term impacts of COVID-19, but none of the long-term ones, said Dr. Peter Hotez. The reason that's relevant is because there's a major reason why The reason that's relevant is because that is a major reason why we vaccinate otherwise healthy younger adults and adolescents and maybe even kids. It's almost as though they forgot about that. It also doesn't consider whether vaccination may be a good idea for healthy people who want to safeguard their vulnerable friends and loved ones who may have depleted immune function. Prasad and Marque say the new policy balances the need to swiftly approve vaccines to have them ready by fall for the most vulnerable adults and children against the needs for more evidence-based offering, for more evidence before offering them to others. Right, but if you just cut off offering them to others, even after we have a ton of research backing them, what is the point? Other than to just get more people sick. Additionally, they say millions of Americans under the age of 65 will still qualify to get a COVID-19 vaccine if they want one, if you have any of the health conditions the CDC lists as raising the risk of severe disease from COVID-19. So, again, healthy people who want access to these vaccines so that they will not be vectors for their friends, and who want access to these vaccines so that they will not develop long COVID and have holes in their goddamn lungs, they're just screwed, I guess. Estimates suggest that 100 million to 200 million Americans will still have access to vaccines in this manner. That means that estimates suggest that 160 to 180 million Americans will not have access to vaccines in this manner. Oh my God. Many Americans now get their vaccinations from pharmacies and other settings outside the doctor's office, so it's not clear who might be determining or checking to see whether someone is even at risk. Do you have to tell the pharmacist why you're high at risk? They're not going to supervise that. Prasad and Markey said their goal in requiring more evidence for other groups is to restore public trust in vaccines. No, this does the opposite of that. So, let me explain. Let me put on the conspiracy theory mindset real quick. Because we're done with the article. This doesn't increase trust in vaccines. This actually, for a minute, made even me more skeptical about the vaccines. The vaccines, which I have friends who are epidemiologists who have studied. The vaccines, which I have done a lot of research on because I had to for this channel. The vaccines, which, while I may not know the ins and outs of how mRNA goes into the body and helps develop a spike protein, I may not know every single bit about it, but I knew enough about the micron size of a particle of COVID-19 on a droplet of water that I was confident enough in my opinion on vaccines, especially this one. And yet for a minute there, reading this article, I even thought, wait, was I wrong? And then I read more of the article and read into the guy who was in charge of the decision making for this and realized that actually, no, I was still right. We have somebody who's just doing Trump's dirty work at this point, who got put into his position likely because of his very public stance about COVID. So, if I were to put on the conspiracy nut hat, this does not make me have more confidence in vaccines. What this does is this makes me feel, if I were a anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist, it would make me feel justified in being an anti-vax person. It would make me feel that all of my fears, instead of being challenged, were justified the entire time when they're not. But I can look at this as if it were a smoking gun to prove that all of my fears had merit the entire time. And I know this is how those people think because they won't shut up in my comment section. So no, this whole thing is infuriating. As for what we can do about it, well, I live in Atlanta, so I imagine a protest in front of the CDC is likely something that's gonna end up happening. If it does, it is likely I may be there, on top of all the other stuff that I have going on. Who knows? Maybe. But as for things that you can do, there are ways to contact officials within the FDA and let them know how much you disapprove of this. Now, will it cause the same feeling of being just frustrated with the general populace as anti-vaxxers doing the same thing? Who knows? But at the very least, getting your voices heard is not the worst thing in the entire world. That all said, the other thing you can do, very, very likely, is try to expedite changing the way that we have to interact with this administration. Right now, what everybody should be doing is getting involved in local politics, using resources like Run for Something in order to get themselves on ballots, getting in contact with their local Democrat or other party, using things like Mobilize to get in contact with them when they are doing and hosting events. Getting in contact with the people in charge of putting the people in charge will get you in the best position you need to be in order to try to be one of those people in charge. And if we can get enough lefties in charge of our local governments, it's a whole lot harder for the federal government to step in and do shit. If they want to keep doing this states' rights bullshit, we can use this directly against them. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments section below. I've given you your call to action for the things that you should do, aside from, subscribing to the channel. And as always, we need to make sure that politics, at least on some level, is intersecting with compassion. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full-time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press, though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.